going to be in 1 Samuel 18. We're going to start there. We're actually going to go through several chapters. We're just going to get little bits and pieces of each chapter. But it talks about a huge tension that takes place between David, young David, and King Saul. It turns into a huge conflict in their life. And the roots of this conflict go back to the time when David killed Goliath, which honestly is exactly what Saul asked him to do. I mean, there was a lot on the line. Whoever won between whatever warrior went out to get Goliath was going to win. Either Israel was going to win or the Philistines were going to win, and the other would become their slaves. I mean, there was a lot on the line there. And this teenager, David, shows up, and he's like, well, it's not my battle, it's God's. Well, let God worry about it. Send me out. And Saul sends him out. And so he does exactly what Saul asked him to do. But Saul was not prepared for the ramifications of David now getting into the national spotlight and being like a national hero. And all of a sudden, Saul was kind of like looked less upon by the people, and David was starting to be elevated. It drove Saul crazy. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 18. The battle's done. It says, as the troops were coming back, when David was returning from killing the Philistine, the women came out from all the cities of Israel to meet King Saul, singing and dancing with tambourines and shouts of joy with three-stringed instruments. They danced, and the women sang, Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. Saul was furious and resented this song. Oh, man. So the entire nation was just saved, right? I mean, all of life could have gone like terribly wrong for everybody. The entire nation saved because David killed Goliath. Saul's life is spared because David killed Goliath. Saul is furious. Even though everything's going great, Saul is furious because the crowd is celebrating David's heroic faith rather than Saul's cowardly decision to send a teenager out to do a man's battle that he should have been doing in the first place, or one of his mighty men should have been doing that. Can we all just admit for a moment that men can be real idiots sometimes? I mean, I'm one. I'll take it. What'd you say? That was a lot of celebration going on. Man, we've got egos. We've got terrible egos. The verse goes on, they credit tens of thousands to David, he complained. Saul's like, wait a minute, the whole world's just improved for you. Your life's been spared. The nation's been spared. Everything's great. And he's whining. They're crediting David with tens of thousands, he complained, but they only credited me with thousands. Well, both of those are incorrect. Both exaggerations, right? What more can he have but the kingdom? Now he wants everything, right? So Saul watched David jealously from that day forward. I think it's pretty safe to say that most, if not all, conflict in our lives comes from jealousy and envy. I mean, there could be other things out there too, but usually the root of it goes back to my pride has been hurt. I want to win. Nobody wants to be wrong. No one wants to be taken advantage of. No one wants to compromise. And when we don't get what our ego craves, and we can't stop fuming about the great injustice done to us, someone pulled me off, some in front of me, someone, whatever it was, or a song that the women sing giving someone credit for killing more than you, we can't stop fuming. We can't stop thinking about it. We go to bed. We can't get it out of our minds. We just can't let it go. And it's like, it's our ego. It's our pride. These next few verses, Saul begins to rave, it says, in the palace. Now, that's an interesting word. At first I thought, well, yeah, he was just angry. I mean, that's an interesting word for rave. And I looked it up. And the word refers to that's used in the Hebrew is a prophetic, ecstatic state. If you remember the Baal worshiper prophets that were trying to get Baal to call fire down, whatever, and they were all like cutting themselves, they're all in a frenzy. That's what the word is talking about. Just this frenzied, crazy state that Saul was in. And David is in the palace playing a song on the lyre, Nice little mellow instrumental music going on. But Saul is allowing his anger and his bitterness to overtake him. And he's not hearing what David is playing, the soothing, beautiful music that from other times we know David played. All he can hear are the sounds of those women on the road singing and dancing. Saul has killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands. And all he could focus on was that one little sentence they were singing. And finally, he loses control and he blows up and he throws a spear and he tries to kill David, but David manages to escape. Well, Saul's jealousy, pride, problem continues to grow, and since he's the king, he has some authority. So he sends David, says, give him 1,000 men. He said, hey, David, go out and do some battles for me. All right. The goal was not even to win the battles. The goal was to kill David. Surely David will die in battle. He's not very old. Yeah, no way he can win this thing. Surely at some point he'll die. But this only increases David's fame because he just keeps winning. Samuel 18:15, when Saul observed that David was very successful, he dreaded him. How about celebrate him? He's doing exactly what you asked him to do. But all Israel and Judah, they celebrated. They loved David because he was leading their troops. So then Saul thinks, okay, I'll give him one of my daughters. I'll offer him one of my daughters and marry the oldest daughter. He offers first and says, I want you to be the champion for me. If things are going great, I give you 1,000. Let's give you the whole army. I want you to go out and do stuff, and you can marry my daughter. And David kind of ruins the plan. He just humbly replies to Saul, so who am I to marry the king's daughter? I'm like this shepherd guy. It wasn't that long ago. I was the last one in this family tending sheep, and I'm a poor commoner, is what he says. He's also referring to the bride price. I can't afford the king's bride price. We're a common family. I just can't do it. So he goes and sends his daughter off to marry someone else. Later on, Saul tries to come with a different daughter. This time he tells David that he doesn't need to pay the bride price. Okay, I got it. I'll tell you what, you can earn it. I want you to go out and get 200 Philistine foreskins. I don't know why that. I mean, I think, why not like 400 ears? I don't know. But he wants foreskins. So he sent David up. That's going to be the price for my daughter. So he sends David off to fight the Philistines. And again, the plan wasn't even against the Philistines. The plan was have anything to get rid of David. Because obviously he's going to go against the Philistines. They're going to say, hey, that's the guy who took out Goliath. Let's get him. And there's going to be revenge, and then they're getting ready to get rid of David. Well, 1 Samuel 18, David and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines, brought their foreskins, and presented them as a full payment to the king to become his son-in-law. Bride price, there you go, father-in-law, there you go. Saul gave his daughter Michal to David as his wife. Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved him. And that should have been like a good thing, right? Hey, my daughter's marrying someone. They love each other. I got a guy working for me. He's like super successful. This is really great. No, he became even more afraid of David. As a result, Saul was David's enemy from then on. Dude, this is all from pride. This is all from, I want to be right, I want you to be wrong, I want everybody to think I'm greater than you, and all that stuff, right? Every time the Philistine, verse 30, commanders came out to fight, David was more successful than all of Saul's officers. So his name became well known. It's hitting Saul right where it hurts, right in the ego. David did everything Saul asked. He did it well. He did exceedingly well. And Saul was jealous that people liked him better and turned his best warrior, national hero, and even son-in-law into his enemy. And all of a sudden, I don't even want you to be alive. I mean, he kind of really been working that way anyway, but now he's going to get more direct, and he escalates things in chapter 19. In verse 11 of chapter 19, Saul sent agents to David's house to watch for him and kill him in the morning. So it's like, just get this over with. I'm tired of this guy. Kill my son-in-law. Right? But his wife, Michal, warned David, if you don't escape tonight, you'll be dead tomorrow. So she lowered David from the window, and he fled and escaped. Conflict? I mean, I'm hoping you don't face any conflict like that. I mean, that's pretty extreme, severe stuff, but it's everywhere. We face it, we deal with it at work, at family, neighborhoods, whatever. Most of us have faced it. Most of us hate it. Some people actually like it. That's a different issue. But it is a reality of life. There's conflict in our life. And what I want to do this morning is take a look at how David handled this conflict. I mean, we know Saul handled it poorly. He tried to just eliminate the competition or the guy he didn't like and kill him even. But I want to look at how David responded and worked through this conflict, because I think we can all learn some lessons on how to handle it next time we are in some type of conflict. A few lessons from David on conflict. Number one is make sure the conflict is real. Have you ever thought someone was mad at you, and you were like worried and afraid, and you couldn't sleep, and all this stuff, and then later on found out they weren't? Or maybe you thought someone hated you, but found out they really didn't. Maybe there was a misunderstanding, maybe it was a personality, whatever. It just wasn't what you thought. Or assumed some conversation was going to go really poorly, and it ended up really not going all that poorly. You just assumed it was going to be this big blow monster, thing. Well, David hears from his wife, hey, Dad's going to kill you. Okay, get out of here quick. And he's thinking to himself, well, I've had some close calls with him in the past. I mean, he did try to get me with a spear. I am like kind of young to be leading armies, and he sent me out to lead armies. I mean, so the idea is not completely out of the question. It's like I could see it possibly happening. So he does flee the scene just to be safe, but then he confirms, like, is this real? Is he really trying to kill me, or am I just like blowing things out of proportion? Because we have a tendency to do that in conflict. Oh, what thing's the worst? And we just do that. We play that game with ourselves. 1 Samuel 20, David fled from Naioth and Ramah, and he came to Jonathan, that's Saul's son and very good friend of David, and he asked, what have I done? What did I do wrong? How have I sinned against your father so that he wants to take my life? Like, that's a legitimate question. Like, is this real? And Jonathan says, no, you're not going to die. Listen, my father doesn't do anything great or small without telling me. So why would he hide this matter from me? This can't be true. So part of the story is, that's not really happening, But David said, your father certainly knows I have found favor with you. And has said, Jonathan must not know this, or else he will be grieved. David also swore, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, there is but a step between me and death. Jonathan said to David, whatever you say, I'll do for you. So they devised this plan. Let's figure out if this is real, or if, we're getting conflicting messages here, or feelings on how this whole thing is. What's really happening here? If Saul's really planning to kill David, then we'll move on. We'll figure something out. But let's find out if it really is real. Or is David's wife just being kind of dramatic? My dad's going to kill you. It's like, well, is he really? I mean, maybe he is. She seemed pretty serious, right? Turns out the conflict is real. Saul really is trying to kill him. And of course, we know that because we have in between, narrative in the scripture. He didn't know that. So he finds out it's real, and then he takes the next step. Number two, if you're in a conflict and you find out, no, it's a legitimate conflict, someone's really out to get me for whatever reason, then you go to number two. Be prepared to defend yourself if needed. David can't hide forever. I mean, Saul's the king, right? He can only hide out in the desert for so long, or run around and, play hide and go seek for so long. At some point, they're going to see each other face to face. And so he goes to Ahimelech, the priest, for help. In 1 Samuel 21, verse 8, David said to Ahimelech, do you have a spear or a sword on hand? I didn't even bring my sword or my weapons, since the king's mission was urgent. Because it was to kill him, but he didn't tell, the priest that. The priest replied, the sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here, wrapped in the cloth behind the ephod. If you want to take it for yourself, then take it, for there isn't another one here. There's none like it, David said. Give it to me. Now, David's not looking for a fight. He's not hoping to use this sword, but he also knows if Saul's going to try to kill me, I need to defend myself. Like I don't have to just stand there and let him stab me with a spear or a sword or whatever. I got to defend myself. So he's prepared to defend himself as if he has to use it. He has to be prepared, but whatever, right? Now, I know there's different opinions out there in the Christian world about that, and I fully respect people with different opinions, but I believe fully that Christian men, you need to be prepared to defend yourself, but your family as well. I'm talking like physically. If someone comes into your home or something's happening, you need to be able to defend your family. We're called to do that. I grew up as a dad with two daughters. So as a dad, I remember thinking as they were growing up, thinking, the day is going to come when there's going to they're going to get older and the maturity and guys and girls, and that's going to and I'm going to be like, there could be potential conflict and all that. Like, what am I going to do as a dad as they go through the teen years and high school and all that stuff? So I started to prepare myself. I didn't think carrying a sword would be a good idea. Get a Goliath sword. Say, you want to date my daughter? Is that what's going on? I didn't think that was a good idea. But so I came with a more subtle plan. I started hitting the gym like really hard. For one thing, I like to work out and everything, but partly also because I just wanted to protect my girls. If there was some physical situation that I needed to do something and protect my children, I wanted to be able to do that. And so I started working out pretty hard. Worked out every day, got my bench press up to about 400, got in fairly decent shape for an old guy in his 30s, and made it through the teen years without any violence. I figured if nothing else, I could intimidate him, oh yeah, you only bench 350? Come on, dude, that's my warm-up, I wanted to be able to kind of have that conversation with some guy. Yeah, the imagination gets a little wild sometimes. So everything went fine, and nothing happened. Everything was great, everything. And then Shanna comes along, and she's younger. And by then, I'd gotten kind of lazy. I was no longer benching 400, and I, as well, did not have Goliath sword. So I did the next best thing. She starts dating Alan, and I thought, ha, I've got all these guns. I was like, look, Alan. You're just kind of like the jokey, dad thing. I got these guns, just so you know. And that really backfired on me because his guns are bigger and better. He'd been raised hunting. He's like, oh yeah, that's the cheap. That you got a Taurus, like, so it didn't affect him at all. Fortunately, he was a guy of character. There were no issues. Not that I was going to shoot him anyway, but I just wanted him to say, don't mess with my daughter. I got guns. What movie is that? Crocodile Dundee? You call that a knife? He's like, yeah, sorry. So sorry, Shanna, I didn't protect you at all. Now, David didn't have time to go work out, right? I mean, this is a live thing. Saul's out to get him. He's not like, well, let me just hit the gym for a year and a half and see if I can't bulk up and scare Saul. That wasn't going to happen. So he got Goliath's sword. He got what he could get. And I guess all I'm saying is you need to figure out in your family, in your setting, what does that mean? What does it mean to be prepared to defend yourself? And you can go a lot of different directions on that, and I'll let you worry about that and work with God. But be prepared to defend your family if needed to. Like I said, David wasn't hoping to use Goliath's sword. He wasn't walking around doing the thing at the movies, walking down the street like, come on, challenge me. He wasn't doing that. He was hoping to never use it. But he had it in case. It was a self-defense thing. The third step is pretty important too. And this helps with the previous one, is do your best to avoid battles. David gets a sword, and then he takes off. And he goes to some pretty extreme measures to not use it. In chapter 21 of 1 Samuel, verse 10, it says, David fled that day from Saul's presence, so he got the sword, took off. And he went to King Achish of Gath. But Achish's servants said to him, isn't this David, the king of the land? Don't they sing about him during their dances? Saul, his king, killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands? Or they're like, oh, we got the national hero in our midst, right? Verse 12, David took this to heart, became very afraid of King Achish of Gath, so he pretended to be insane in their presence. He acted like a madman around them, scribbling on the doors of the city gate, letting saliva run down his beard. He's like, if they just think I can't handle any myself, like they'll think I'm just out of my mind, I won't have any trouble, right? Verse 14, look, can you see this man is crazy? Achish said to his servants, why did you bring him to me? Do I have such a shortage of crazy people that you thought this one to act crazy around me? Is this one going to come into my house? So David left Gath, took refuge in the cave of Adullam. When David's brothers and his father's, the whole family heard, they went down and joined him there. fascinating to me that this guy who was really pretty fearless, David, right? When he was younger and shepherding, like if a lion or a bear is going after his sheep, he would by hand take that sheep out of the lion's mouth and take the lion out. I was just like, you're not messing with my sheep. He's the guy who went after the Philistine, and out of all the army and all the people of Israel, he's the one who said, I'll take him. I mean, really? I mean, he understood it was God's battle and not his. He's the one who became a national hero because of his continued bravery, leading the armies, winning, everything he did, winning. So he might have been terrified, but he wasn't like shaking in his boots. I mean, he could have handled himself. I'm sure he's quite confident of that. He impressed all the militaries in the land and all the people because of his fighting skills, right? So why would he act like this at the cost of losing like the respect of the people who thought it was pretty cool? Because he didn't want to go battle. He didn't want to fight. It wasn't his goal. His goal was not to use that sword. His goal was not to fight Saul. His goal was to avoid the battle at all costs, even if people thought like, oh, really? I mean, it diminished their view of him. And I think you'll find that the bigger man in most situations is the guy who steps down and walks away from the conflict, not the one who forges into the battle, sword ablazing, ready, like, come on, let's go. If you can figure out a way to avoid it, that's a healthy thing. I've told you before, I was the youngest of three boys, right, in my family, and I mean, you know how it is. Your boys are always fighting over something, who gets to choose the Kool-Aid, whatever. I mean, we're just fighting about everything. But I was a little guy, so I always lost. I mean, as a little guy, they took advantage of their size and their height and their strength, and I was, 3 years younger than one brother, 8 years younger than the other. What chance did I have about, against any of them? But the day came when I realized for the first time, like, I think I got this. I was in high school, been playing football for a while, been lifting weights, been in pretty good shape, blah, 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 all that stuff. And it was this day in the living room when my brother challenged me, and I jumped up like, okay, let's go, dude. We're going to do this, And it immediately occurred to me as I stood up, like, I'm bigger than him now. Like, I hadn't thought of it before. Maybe we hadn't fought for a while, I don't know. And I realized, like, I'm bigger than him, I'm stronger than him, I'm probably faster than him. I'm in better shape. It's like, this guy has no chance against me today. And I looked over and I looked, like, at the corner of my eye, saw my mom, and then she had that look on her face like, oh, this is going to happen, and I thought, can't do that to mom. And now that I know, before it was like a 30% chance maybe I could win. It was getting there. But this was like a 99.9% chance. This guy is going to go down. I thought to myself, I can't do that. For one thing, what's the fun if you know you're going to win anyway? Like, whatever. I don't have anything to prove to myself or him. Maybe him, but I didn't care. And so once that occurred to me that, like, I'm going to win this one, I just sat down and said, no, I'm out, and let him win. You don't have to win every battle, The whole definition of gentleness in the New Testament, you see that word periodically, and the fruits of the Spirit and everything, is strength under control. Someone who has the ability to do destruction and to step back and say, I'm not going to, though, in the name of Jesus, because there's bigger stuff than this. There's bigger stuff than giving my brother a bloody nose or a fat lip or whatever was going to happen, the other thing. And so I backed off. And really that's what David was doing here. He's like, nope, I'm just going to let drool hang down, go down my beard and scribble on the walls and do whatever it is that made people go like, something's not right with David. Something happened to him. So he did his best to avoid the conflict. And the fourth thing is don't take revenge. 2 times David had the perfect opportunity to take revenge, perfect opportunity, and he chose not to. One time it's David and his men, they're hiding in a cave and hiding from Saul, and Saul's out to get him, and him and his troops are on the search, and then Saul's like, hey, guys, let's take this rest area, got to use the restroom, and he goes up into the cave and starts doing his business up there. Happens to be the same cave David and his guys are hiding in. There's a big enough cave they're kind of hiding in the back, so Saul doesn't know they're there, but and they got the light at the end of the tunnel thing. They can see Saul, and they're like, oh, there he is. Yeah, he's looking pretty vulnerable right now. And the guy's like, go get him. And David's like, nope, I won't do it. Not going to take out the king. He refuses to do that, but he does sneak up and cut off a piece of Saul's robe. Now, how much closer can you get when a guy is doing what he's doing? And he cuts off a piece of robe, and then Saul finishes his job, starts heading back down to the troops, and then David pops his head out and says, hey, guys, by the way, could have killed you. Here's a piece of your robe. And Saul is like, it strikes him. It hits him really hard. Here's his response in chapter 24, verse 16. Saul wept aloud. Like he just realized he could have just died. I mean, it was like, who wouldn't kill your enemy in that situation? I mean, he's trying to kill you. I mean, right? Verse 17, he said to David, you're more righteous than I. You've done what is good to me, though I have done what is evil to you. You yourself have told me today what good you did for me. When the Lord handed me over to you, you didn't kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does not let him go unharmed. May the Lord repay you with good for what you've done for me today. Now, those warm fuzzies didn't last long. It's not much longer. That rage is still going on. Saul goes back out to kill David again. And one of those times he's out there, they're camping, as they do out, and everybody's asleep, and even the guards, which is, probably bad news for the guards. And David and a buddy sneak into the camp, and they see David there sleeping. And again, David has a perfect opportunity to take revenge, to proactively defend himself, but, it's a revenge. And it's in chapter 26, a couple chapters later. David said to Abishai, don't destroy him. He's like, come on, let's get rid of him. And he said, nope, don't do it. Who can lift a hand against the Lord's anointed and be innocent? David added, as the Lord lives, the Lord will certainly strike him down. Either his day will come and he'll die, or he'll go into battle and perish. However, as the Lord is my witness, I will never lift my hand against the Lord's anointed. Instead, take the spear and the water jug by his head and let's go. So again, he goes, hey, got your spear. I wonder where I found that next to you when you were sleeping, right? Two perfect opportunities to get revenge, and David chose to be the bigger man and not do it. If you're a Christian and you've been wronged, and you will be, this life, this stuff happens, then you know what? The last thing you need to worry about is getting revenge. The last thing you need to worry about is going after them and making sure they get what's theirs. Look what David said. The Lord will certainly strike it. The Lord's going to take care of this. The guy's going to be out of the picture one way or another. Life's going to go on. I'll be king. He's supposed to be king, and I'll be king one of these days. So don't worry about it. Let God worry about this. Maybe he'll die. Maybe he'll go into battle. Who knows? David understood that God is so much better at revenge than we are. So much more. And I could tell you story after story of times, like in my life, conflict, and it's just like, I get all wound up, and I just, God, take care of it, God. And he just does. He just always does. Maybe not in my timing, not how I would want to do it, but he's always way more creative than I am. So I just let God worry about stuff. It's so much more calming for us in the middle of conflict. That person at work that's always, poking at you, just let God worry about it. He'll take care of it. He always does. Ultimately, God took Saul out of the picture. David became king, and we have all the great stories of David being a king. So there's your lessons for facing conflict. Honestly, I believe if you live by these things, you will reduce an awful lot of stress and anger and anxiety and conflict in your life. Make sure the conflict's real. Make sure it really, and it's not make-believe or imagine in your own mind. Be prepared to defend yourself if needed. You might need to. Do your best to avoid battles, and don't take revenge. And that is our lesson from our good friend, for soon-to-be King David in this story. Let's pray.